What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got our Week 8 fantasy football running back starts and sits for every single matchup, so make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at Pigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section, do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have. We'll do our best to answer them all, but with that being said, let's get right into it. Before getting into our breakdown, I want to highlight the sponsor of today's video, OddsJam. OddsJam continues to be the place that I use for all of my sports betting research, from the NFL, NBA, MLB, to daily fantasy and everything in between. But don't just take my word for it. Let me show you firsthand all the amazing tools OddsJam has to offer. Starting with their positive EV tool, which identifies situations where a single sportsbook has mispriced their line compared to the rest of the market. They're basically willing to pay a lot more so that you bet with them compared to the other sportsbook. At the end of the day, you're getting the best odds, essentially a mathematical edge and guaranteed money in the long run. But also available is OddsJam's arbitrage tool, which shows situations where the market is so mispriced that you can bet on both sides and guarantee a risk-free return. OddsJam's calculators show you exactly how much you have to bet on the over and under and what the respective guaranteed risk-free return would be. There's also OddsJam's Sportsbook tool, which consolidates all available market info, over 200 sportsbooks, and provides updates in real time and allows you to see line movement. But my personal favorite is their Fantasy Optimizer tool, which is great for those using PrizePicks, Underdogs, or other daily fantasy sites, as you get to see discrepancies between all of these sportsbooks. Imagine, PrizePicks has a Patrick Mahomes line at 200.5 passing yards, and all other books like FanDuel and Underdog have this line at 230 passing yards. Well, getting the over 200.5 on PrizePicks would be an absolute steal. Guess what? OddsJam does that for you. And the good news is, if you sign up today and use our code PIGSKIN, check the link and promo code in the description of this video, you will get 25% off your first month. OddsJam also has a 7-day free trial, so you get to try before you buy. So don't waste any more time and sign up for OddsJam using our code PIGSKIN today. Now, we kick off Week 8 on Thursday with the Buccaneers at the Bills, and I'll be honest with you, from a running back perspective, I don't love this matchup. I think it's going to be an aerial affair. The wide receivers that are really shining here. For the Bills, James Cook, Latavius Murray. Look, Latavius Murray has kind of gone into that backup role like we expected. James Cook is the more talented running back, but versus this stingy Buccaneers defense, I'm a little bit anxious about James Cook. You know, if he doesn't find a touchdown last week, his day all of a sudden doesn't look quite that great. So I think here, honestly, we're dealing with a couple of running backs, James Cook and Rachaad White, that have a lot of boom or bust tendencies. And on the side of Rachaad White, he's not going to go 6 catches for 65 yards every single week. And that's what worries me here. So for that reason, again, I don't think we've seen him have all that much success on the ground. In standard formats, it's tough to trust Rachaad White. You know, in PPR, it's a little bit better, but again, if you're looking for him to have that same pass-catching success from last week, I think that's fool's gold. And I think it's going to be Mike Evans, Chris Godwin that really shine here. Both these running backs, they have some upside, but I think you could argue they have more question marks in these matchups. They've both shown to be a decent amount of boom or bust this season so far. And if we're looking at the matchups themselves, the likely game script, I think you can find better options elsewhere. So I have both of them as sits. Then Jets at the Giants. I have both the top guys here as starts. Breece Hall, Saquon Barkley. Notice I'm not even mentioning Dalvin Cook at this point. He's been phased out. You know, if Aaron Rodgers was still at the helm of this offense, it'd be a different situation. But Breece Hall has kind of taken over. And this is what we expect to some extent. We said Breece Hall, whenever he gets going, it will likely be towards the latter portion of the season. But that doesn't mean that Breece Hall doesn't have a bunch of question marks. The problem is Zach Wilson here for the Jets, because you never know what offensive version of the Jets you're going to get. So it's going to vary week to week, but the Giants aren't all that scary. So I could see this game being close, and both these guys, honestly, getting close to 20 carries, if not more. So from that perspective, I think there's going to be a lot of volume for both these guys in this game, so I'll start them there, but I don't think they quite have the same upside as you would normally want when you consider the talent. So to me, they're both in the running back 2 conversation. Saquon Barkley, I do think his upside goes down a little bit if Daniel Jones returns for what it's worth. And then the Jets defense, again, very stingy unit. So what you're hoping here is volume, volume, volume. That is the name of the game. If it was a little bit more of a friendly matchup, higher upside, but not quite the case this week. Afterwards, Jags at the Steelers. I'm starting Travis Etienne. That's the easy part. He's been sensational these last few weeks. The Steelers don't really scare me right now. I know they're coming off a win, but, they probably could have gone either way with that game. So at the end of the day, I think it's a game where, they've been giving up success on the ground. It happened last week with a Darrell Henderson and a Royce Freeman who were just signed by the Rams. So keep that in mind. Etienne has been a big part of this Jaguars offense. So I like him as a low-end running back 1. And then for the Steelers, I have Najee Harris and Jalen Warren as sits. I know both of them had touchdowns last week, but honestly, it's tough to get excited about 14 carries and then 8 carries respectively. So on top of that, if the Jaguars go up in this game and it's not close like the case was last week with the Steelers and the Rams, we're not going to see all that much focus on the rushing attack. So for that reason, I just don't think the game script is going to be favorable. I'm passing on the running backs for the Steelers. Then Eagles at the Commanders. I'm only really going with DeAndre Swift here. I know it's a divisional clash. You never know what'll happen, but this Washington defense, it ain't good, folks. And I think DeAndre Swift can have a lot of success, kind of a bounce back game, if you will. He just, wasn't utilized a bunch this last week, but either way, I think here we can see him as a high-end running back too. I'm sitting Kenneth Gainwell. I'm not chasing the touchdowns. He didn't have a lot of attempts. He's the clear-cut backup. And then for Washington, Brian Robinson has kind of been on a downward trend as of late. Some touchdowns have kind of salvaged his performances, but stats-wise, yards, things like that, not quite what we want to see. And versus a very tough Eagles defense, I think it's going to be a long day for this Washington offense, so I'm sitting Brian Robinson. Afterwards, Rams at the Cowboys. Look, we talked about the Rams before. Darrell Henderson came in and he looked good. Shouldn't be a surprise because he's very familiar with his Rams offense and with everyone there. So he kind of got the nod, more of the carries. And I think he did more with them than Royce Freeman. I think Freeman is going to go into kind of a backup role, and I think Henderson is going to see the bulk of the carries. I have him as a low-end running back too. I'm sitting Royce Freeman. For the Cowboys, Tony Pollard start. I think he's going to be a borderline top 10 running back. And I will say, with Darrell Henderson, if this thing goes with a negative game script, I could see him, be affected by that. I don't think he's going to duplicate the success he had last week. But moving on, Vikings at the Packers. This one might look a little bit wonky, but I'm only looking at the starts for the Vikings. Alexander Mattison. I think here, if Alexander Mattison struggles, we could see a little bit of a shift in this backfield. Last week, we saw Cam Akers being utilized the most he has been up until this point by the Vikings. But I think Mattison, a little bit more familiar with Green Bay. I think he's still going to be given the nod over Akers to begin with. The Packers don't scare me. I think he's going to be a solid low-end running back too. I'm still sitting Cam Akers, but that could change come next week. For Green Bay, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, I have both of them as sits. I think Aaron Jones isn't healthy right now. I think that's what it comes down to. That's why A.J. Dillon got the bulk of the carries last week. And if they couldn't have success versus the Denver defense, I'm a little bit nervous about them going up versus the Vikings. So if Aaron Jones was fully healthy, it'd be a different situation, but that's not the case. Give it another week, and then I think he goes in the start column. Then Falcons at the Titans. This one's really interesting. Bijan Robinson burned a lot of people last week, but that was more so because of what the Falcons did or didn't do, reporting a potential headache or something of that nature. As long as they're honest about the injury report, we should see Bijan Robinson getting his normal carries. If not, and he takes a step back, then it'll be the Tyler Algier show. So you just have to keep an eye out for that. It's one of these situations that we just have to monitor the health of Bijan Robinson. But if nothing negative comes out of it, then I would say Algier and Cordero Patterson are sits. The Titans are stingy defensively. Then for Tennessee, Derrick Henry. I think this isn't going to be a game where it's a blowout one way or the other. And there's rumors about the Titans going with Will Levis at quarterback. If that's the case, we could see them leaning on the rushing attack. Derrick Henry, I think, can have a decent performance. And especially now with rumors about the Titans being open to trading everyone, maybe they want to showcase Derrick Henry a little bit, something like that. We'll see either way. I think in a game, again, where it's going to be close, Derrick Henry is going to be featured. I would start both of these guys. Just keep an eye out for Bijan Robinson's health. Then Patriots at the Dolphins. I'm starting Ramondre Stevenson. I know Ezekiel Elliott had success last week, but I think this is going to be a game where the Patriots have to rely more on passing the football. Ramondre Stevenson does that better as a pass catcher. I think he's going to be more involved. So I have him as a start. I think he's going to be a mid-level running back too in PPR formats. I'm sitting Zeke for the Dolphins, Raheem Mostert. I think he will bounce back. I don't think the Dolphins are going to be playing from behind like they were last week. I think he's going to be back to a low-end running back one. Then Saints at the Colts. I'm starting Alvin Kamara. The dude's been an absolute stud, especially in PPR formats. Since the day he returned, I think it can continue this week as well. To me, he is a low-end running back one. And then Jamal Williams, I think he's kind of in that backup role, but his carries will go up a little bit here and there. More so kind of like a goal line running back. For the Colts, Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss did have equal carries, but both of them saw a lot of action last week. And I've been saying it, I think Jonathan Taylor trending up and up and up. And then Zach Moss, don't get me wrong, great backup, great handcuff. But I don't want to start two running backs for the Colts, especially versus a stingy Saints defense. So I would rather lean Taylor and sit Zach Moss. Then Texans at the Panthers. I'm only interested in the Texans starters here. Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary might seem a little bit crazy, but both have been getting, closer and closer carries these last couple of weeks. But more importantly, they're facing one of the worst run defenses in the NFL in the Carolina Panthers. I think we're going to see decent performances from Pierce and Singletary. Both can be in the low-end running back two conversation. For Carolina, Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard. I'm only starting somebody here if Miles Sanders doesn't play. Because if Miles Sanders does play, I think he's going to be less than 100%. I think Chuba Hubbard is going to have close to equal carries. And I think it's going to be a situation where you don't want either one of them. But if Sanders doesn't play, then Chuba Hubbard will get the volume. I think you can start him. Again, probably in that low-end running back two conversation. And it's probably going to take a week or two until Miles Sanders is quote-unquote 100% healthy. Until then, I'd rather have him as a sit. Moving on, Browns at the Seahawks. Look, Browns keep getting injured at the running back position. Jerome Ford, ankle injury, only going to miss a couple of weeks. But until then, Kareem Hunt is the main guy. It's going to be the Kareem Hunt show. And, we've seen it before when Nick Chubb has been hurt and Hunt was the only backup. I like Kareem Hunt as a high-end running back too. For Seattle, Kenneth Walker, tough matchup, but he's been great so far. High-end running back too as well. Then Pierre Strong, the backup in Cleveland to Kareem Hunt. I wouldn't get too cute with it here. I think Kareem Hunt is going to carry the load. Pierre Strong, backup, nothing more than that. Afterwards, Bengals at the 49ers. I'm starting both the top guys here, Joe Mixon and Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey, the much higher upside, top three running back. Joe Mixon, Bengals offensively has been hit or miss, going up versus a tough defense. So Joe Mixon, I still think he's worth a start, but not in the RB1 conversation like Christian McCaffrey. Then Chiefs at the Broncos. I'm only interested in Pacheco for the Chiefs. Broncos defense doesn't scare me here, so I have Pacheco as a high-end running back too. And then for the Broncos right now, as long as he's healthy, the only running back worth considering is Javonte Williams, but not a favorable matchup. And I think honestly you can sit all the rushers here for Denver. Don't overthink it. I think this one could get ugly. Then Ravens at the Cardinals. I'll start Gus Edwards just because I think that Cardinals defensively aren't anything all that scary. I'm sitting Justice Hill. Edwards, more of a standard suited running back in my opinion. But either way, I think the Ravens can put up a decent amount of points here versus Arizona. So I think Gus Edwards will have some success, not necessarily as much as he did last week, but still low on running back too. And then for the Cardinals, I'm sitting Amari DeMarcado. I think it's a tough matchup versus the Ravens here. And I think the Cardinals are going to have to air it out more so than anything. So for that reason, he is a sit. Then Bears at the Chargers. This one's really tough because if we get Roschon Johnson back, what's going to happen with D'Onta Foreman? So that's how I'm going to preface this. If Roschon Johnson comes back, D'Onta Foreman is a sit. I personally think he's done enough to warrant being the top guy for the Bears, but that doesn't mean the Bears think the same way that I do. Now, for the Chargers, Austin Eckler, I think he's going to have a huge day here versus the Bears. This is the matchup we've been waiting for since he's returned from injury. Great matchup. I think he's going to be a top 5 running back on the week. If Roschon Johnson doesn't play, though, D'Onta Foreman, fire him up. And then Raiders at the Lions. I'll start Josh Jacobs, asterisk next to his name, because I only want to start him if Jimmy Garoppolo plays. If Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't play, I don't trust this Raiders offense really at all, and especially if they have to go up versus this Lions offense, who I think will bounce back here, knowing that they're facing the Raiders defense. So Josh Jacobs, only starting him if Garoppolo plays. Then for Detroit, assuming David Montgomery doesn't play, I think Jahmyr Gibbs, again, can have a big performance on the ground, through the air. If David Montgomery does suit up, he is the option that you go with. Yeah, he's proven that to be the case for the Lions. Then Jahmyr Gibbs, I would only be starting in PPR formats in that case. But with that, we wrap up our Week 8 fantasy football running back starts and sits for every single matchup. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section, do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have. We'll do our best to answer them all. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future